Before anything else, on behalf of everyone in this room, I wanted to thank, of course, Max and the leadership of the Hawaii LGBTQIA Plus Legacy Foundation and the entire team for giving us the space, the Third House for giving us the space and the place for us to have this conversation and also to be in community. I think today is really a conversation that is both timely and also relevant and relatable to many of us. I think we're here because the Legacy Foundation really believes, and I think we all believe, that the members of the LGBTQIA plus community deserves dignity, support, and most of all, safety. Again, my name is Constancio Paranal III. I am honored to serve as the Managing Director for Hawaii Coalition for Immigrant Rights. And in my work, I have seen firsthand how policy decisions truly influence healthcare decisions, access to healthcare, education, and even immigration rights. And for many of us, these are not abstractions. These determine whether we will have access to care, whether we will be able to keep our families together, and sometimes even simply as living openly or authentically. So tonight, the purpose of today's conversation is threefold. First is really to determine what is happening on the federal, the state, and the local levels. Second is to identify how these changes are impacting the LGBTQIA plus community here in Hawaii, most especially those who come from, who have intersecting identities. And thirdly, we hope that as we leave this place, we remain empowered to take action, whether it's through advocacy or simply supporting one another. And be a part of a coalition. I will, as the moderator, I will be posing questions and then later on invite your voice into the room. And we will be talking about challenges, but also a lot about hope, about resilience, and how to come together, and also the tools that are available for us to protect our community. So with that said, let's meet our incredible panelists who are leaders and advocates who have each made a profound impact and difference in their fields. And I want to start off with Congresswoman Jill Takuda. Congresswoman, if you could just share something that is deeply passionate, that you're deeply passionate about in today's conversation.
Aloha, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. So the question was,
what you're deeply passionate about today's conversation.
you know, I think for me, it always comes down, and we're just talking about this, being a mother to two teenage boys. And they literally grew up with me when I was in the state Senate, crawling around on the floor when we were fighting for many different things, including civil unions, including same-sex marriage. And for me, it was always about how do I allow them to grow up to be anyone they wanted to be, to love whoever they wanted to love, without any boundaries, without any fears, without any judgment. And so for me, it comes back to my kids and what I view as my responsibility to treat everyone's child as if they were my own. So it's my babies, my two teenage boys that I will go back home to tonight and probably to remind them to take a bath, because they still won't have done that by the time I get home. Guarantee that. But it's my children.
Thank you so much. Nikos Leverance.
My name is Nikos Leverance. I am the policy manager at Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center. H3RC's mission is to reduce harm, promote health, create wellness, and fight stigma in Hawaii and the Pacific. Amongst our portfolio, we provide medical case management services to over 500 people living with HIV on Oahu. The thing that I'm passionate about, as ever, is civil rights and moving toward a just and equitable society.
Thank you so much, Nikos. Dr. Sandy Harjo Livingston.
Aloha. I am chair of the Hawaii LGBTQ+ Commission, and I am most passionate about ensuring that our rights are not stripped from us, and ensuring that we as individuals occupy space at the local and the state levels to ensure that the left In particular, LGBTQIA plus people are represented on local boards, neighborhood boards, state boards, commissions, to ensure our voice is there.
Thank you so much. Madeline McKee.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Madeline McKeag. I am the Advocacy Director for Hawaiian Council, recent rebrand. I think I am most passionate, excited to talk about today and generally is inspiring action in the everyday. I think there is always more work to do, and we always need more people to do that good work.
And last but not the least, Danica Ramos.
Hello, everybody. My name is Danica Ramos. I'm an immigration attorney at the University of Hawaiʻi Law School, Refugee and Immigration Law Clinic, where we provide free legal services for immigrants related to all kinds of stuff, so citizenship, asylum, deportation defense. So we've been very busy, if you haven't heard. One thing I'm really passionate about, especially now, is when I think about we just talked about intersecting identities, and I think a lot about for immigrants they uproot everything to come here for a different life, for a new life, and for those who are also identify as LGBTQ, there's that additional layer of finding acceptance and finding inclusivity in a place that's totally new and wondering if they'll be accepted in their new home as well. And so I'm really passionate about talking about that and bridging those two together.
Thank you so much, Danica. Well, we'll definitely be talking a lot of different issues, and I would like to start first with healthcare and HIV funding. You know, for decades, the Ryan White program has ensured that people living with HIV have access to medical care, medication, and stable housing. And recently, we've seen shifts in funding that could threaten this future. And so, being part of HHRC NICOS, I wanted to ask you this question. If you could just walk us through what's happening and why this matters for Hawaii.
Well, I think it's first important to remind ourselves what the Ryan White Care Act is and how it came to be. The Ryan White Care Act, in brief, amongst other things, provides medical care and treatment for those living with HIV. It was the product of years of concerted advocacy on the continent by the queer movement. They shut down Wall Street for a bit. They went in and disrupted the mass in New York City. This is ACT UP New York, right? We're, in some ways, it's like Back to the Future. We're not as bad, in a bad place as we were back then. But in terms of the Ryan White Care Act, it's survived. It has survived the budget acts mostly so far right now. The Trump administration has rescinded something called the Ending the HIV Epidemic, which it initiated in its first term. But our real concern here is that there's a long-term trend amongst the Project 2025 and MAGA Maha set to really strip sexual and gender minorities of their identity and of their participation in life. And for the Ryan White Care Act, it's life or death for about 500,000 people across the country. So I encourage, Jill Takuda to keep working with her colleagues in the Democratic Party and maybe across the aisle to keep fighting like a mother for essential services for our community. So that's about it right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us an overview of the Ryan White Care Act. And on that note, Congresswoman Jill Takuda, if you could, from the federal level, what are some of the political and budgetary forces that are at play here? And what can our community do to safeguard this funding?
We could be here all night. But we'd be very depressed and probably drinking all the alcohol that you might have in the case. It's a really tough time right now because even things that might have been at one point in our lifetimes controversial had become bipartisan. And we agreed that these are human beings. These are lives that needed to be saved. Things like Ryan White, Hopewell funding, all of these things needed to happen. And now all of a sudden, whether it's Project 2025 or the president's skinny budget or the big ugly bill, I do not call that thing beautiful. I mean, the rescission bills, the rescission plans that they have going through are these things. It's cutting away at our humanity. Like, you all know the stats, and it's nasty. Every program we love that would get every single human being a chance to thrive, from $1 trillion in Medicaid funding, will hit every single community, but especially our communities of color, especially our immigrant community, especially our LGBTQ community. When you think of $500 billion in Medicare, over hundreds of billions of dollars in SNAP, EBT, food money, being completely taken away, and so much more. That's just some of the top lines. People, it really is erasing our humanity. And this is a situation we're in critical mode right now. And what we need the most help is, you know, that the Democrats will be the wall, the solid line that will not move or budge when it comes to voting hell no every single time, putting up amendments to force them to vote, to say, I don't mind if people die. I don't mind if people are homeless. I don't mind if children starve, these types of things. But what we do need is 3 courageous people to cross the line and say enough is enough. Think back to the Bush administration. Think back to the Reagan originally administration. Think all the way back, Bush 1 and Bush 2. We passed bills and had funding to do these kinds of things that now are completely being axed and being flatlined. We have got to find a few courageous people that are going to be willing to stand with us, to say hell no to a lot of these cuts that are absolutely painful. And, you know, we're just talking about healthcare cuts right now. But I've talked a lot lately about just the overall erasure that is happening, the whitewashing of our history and our people, the English-only mandates that they are trying to impose on a state, quite frankly, that has 2 official languages and recognizes every language and dialect that our people speak. But it is the erasure overall that I am really, really seriously worried about. Because if they can try to take away who we are, then what's absolutely next? You know, we worry about our health care and our food money, but so hard I think about all the fights we've had just to be able to identify, you know, completely wholly as who we are. And I think that's one of the biggest fights that we've got right now.
Thank you, and we really appreciate you being there, fighting for us. In addition to healthcare, one of the things that we had talked about is gender-affirming care that is currently being attacked. And across the country, whether young and adults, it has become a flashpoint of political debates. HHHRC, again, has been at the forefront of this. And I would like to ask Nikos, what are some of the most pressing threats right now that you see happening in the landscape?
Beyond the regression at the federal level and an administration and interests supporting this administration that think that people's sexual orientation and gender identity is their property. This is a very radical, dangerous, sadistic, and cruel orientation. It has no basis in American values, certainly. And I think that on the subject of gender-affirming care, I got word recently from one of my colleagues at H3RC that one of our local insurance providers is cutting off access to hormone treatment, not for youth seeking gender reassignment or therapy, but for adults as well. So trans people are on the front lines of erasure. Once upon a time, the LGBTQ movement did not include the T 35, 40 years ago. And that was an explicit choice. We've come a long way. We see now people wanting to use the legal system to enact and enforce their radical authoritarian ideology on everybody throughout the country. So what we need now here in Hawaiʻi is a shield law, like has been done in the context of reproductive health care, to ensure that the AG of Texas or one of the other southern states does not sue those providing care here. We had a shield law bill that made its way through the process, through the House, through several committees in the Senate, but it died in Representative Takuta's former committee, Senate Ways and Means. So I commend Governor Green for his leadership on this. I commend Governor Green for standing up to this administration saying that our National Guard is not going to participate in a military garrison in our communities in the way that's going on right now in DC. But Democrats here need to shore it up, need to pass a to pass a shield care law, gender-affirming shield bill, and that's what's most needed right now. When push comes to shove, and things go down, we must recognize that trans people are protected under state non-discrimination laws. Gender identity is a protected category. We also need to pass the Equality Act at the federal level. And I'm sure our representative here and most of her Democratic colleagues are supportive of that. And the Equality Act basically would add sexual orientation and gender identity to federal non-discrimination laws. So we need to do that. We also need to overturn this administration's ruinous policy against trans people in the military. This is an outrageous proposition that runs totally afoul of lived experience and of evaluation by the RAND Corporation. So trans people, what's next? Are we going back to the pre-don't ask, don't tell days when gay people were summarily excluded, not just from the military, but from any participation in federal employment? We need to say hell no to that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nico. Maddie, in one of our conversations, you had mentioned that Hawaii has protections in place, but those protections are not guaranteed. So how can our communities prepare for the ripple effects of the federal rollback?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Kako, everything Nico said, I've mentioned in previous conversations, I feel incredibly lucky to have grown up in the time and community that I have, where I truly have never really felt this amount of threat. And I hope that the same is true for a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my friends who maybe grew up similarly. We grew up watching Glee. It was very different. But that being said, now is the time where we deeply have to understand to not take that for granted. I think at the state level, things like SHIELD acts are incredibly important, but even outside of political advocacy, building community is critical. I think without getting terribly wonky, I reflect a lot on my family and how much they understand of the work that I do. And it's one thing to come at them with AMIs and all of this acronym soup, and then it's another thing to say, I can't afford my home, or my friends can't get married anymore, and keeping it at that level and making it make sense to everyday people how it's going to affect and ripple out on them. I think as people are beginning to understand this is not just something that's happening on the continent, this is something that's going to happen here. What do we do to make sure my neighbors, my family are as safe as they've ever been and safer in the future?
Thank you. Making it make sense for the community and building community. So from a community engagement lens, Sandy, what strategies work best to mobilize people to protect these services?
Honestly, we can learn from the right. We are in the year, it's been 60 years since neoconservatives created themselves, right? The Democrats who decided that they didn't want racial segregation, desegregation to happen, skipped over to the Republican Party, created the neoconservative movement, which led to the religious right movement. Nixon's election in 1968. We have to remember that what's happening right now is 60 years of work that the Republican Party has put into this that has led us to where we are right now. This is didn't happen 10 years ago. It didn't happen 20 years ago. This is 60 years in the making. And so we are pushing back against that 60 years because it's starting to encroach out here in Hawaii. And so really, what we're going to have to do is take some of their strategies, getting involved on community boards, neighborhood boards, the state commissions, taking the time out of your day, and I know it does take time, trust me, I have several jobs at this point, but we have to be there because they're there. They're taking those spots. They're there putting their voices out. They're there talking to the legislators, going to the public access room, looking at ways to circumvent the laws that are here in Hawaii. The only way we are going to be able to fight this is if we take them seriously and do what they do. Join the boards, join the commissions, and ensure that your voice is heard and that you are fighting for the people here in Hawaii, not for the people on the mainland who are trying to change our life out here.
Thank you. Fighting for the people here in Hawaii. Thank you so much. And serving and showing up. Very important message. Maddie, one of the things that makes our place special is our culture. And as you had mentioned, it is impacting us here in Hawaii, those federal programs. We've seen national polarization influencing our culture, and I would like to have this conversation, and this conversation is becoming more blunt and sometimes abrasive. You know, being part of Hawaiian Council, how is this showing up in our LGBTQIA plus community, and how can we keep our advocacy grounded in aloha?
Thank you. I think that we have known since time immemorial about queer people, trans people, and we've just had a variety of names for them. And that is something that we have known for generations upon generations, and only in recent times been taught to treat them otherwise. And I think it would be foolish to say that what is happening elsewhere doesn't ripple out and affect us as well. It's important to understand not just the strides that have been made, but how quickly we can get pushed back or pushed further away from all the strides that we've made. And so in terms of keeping the advocacy rooted in aloha, in malama, in all of these different things that we want to do, I do feel like it is trying to lead with empathy as much as possible. I think I do really try to presume the best, presume misunderstanding, or understand where things are coming from. I'm very lucky to work where I am, to live where I am, and to have the conversations that I do, even when those conversations are not what I want them to be. But I have to understand that everybody is coming from their own perspective, and maybe that's coming out in a way that is not being expected. Maybe some brash words, aggressive phrases are because of, we haven't been treated right in many ways, and we continue to lash out and maybe blame the wrong people. And refocusing our attention, our time, and energy on who is making those rules, who is creating those impacts, who is the cause of those effects, and not the people who are also being affected by those things, is at the very least where I try to start.
Thank you. One of the areas when we talk about community well-being, we talk about education. And I wanted to ask Representative Takuda, polarization shows up in education. And, with DEI, attacks on DEI programs, book bans, and even restrictions on curriculum. How are these national trends impacting our youth here in Hawaii?
That's a great question. First of all, I'm the proud product of public schools here in Hawaii, Castle High School. I've got 2 teenage boys at Castle as well. My husband and I really felt you have to not just talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk. And so every cut that they have been trying to make to public education, whether it be Title I, which is a great equalizer for so many of our kids, if it's 21st century school, so we don't have latchkey kids, we can support summer programs, all of these different things, English language learners. If you think about all the things that they've tried to take a hatchet to, billions of dollars, quite frankly, trying to destroy the entire Department of Education. in the big ugly bill taking away Pell Grants. I could not have been the first to go to college without Pell, Perkins, and Stafford. I took everything out, plus work study on top of that. To cap graduate student loans, to take away Pell Grant opportunities from kids, this is really cutting us off at the knees. And that's before we start to talk about the book bans and the erasure. That's before you start to talk about too many websites or groups that take money having to clean their websites of bad red words. And I've often asked them, especially in Hawaii, well, if you scrub your website of all of these words or you take it out of the curriculum, what is left? What is left? And again, I just feel so lucky that we live in Hawaii. Hawaii, our State Department of Education, the only single SCA, LEA, that's big words to just say we are one school district with one school board. They have to stand united. And when we talk about packing the boards and the commissions, we have, especially when we think about education, the greatest equalizer, the safe haven for many of our kids, where they learn to identify, where they ask their questions, which may not be safe at home or in their neighborhood, but it might be a teacher, a counselor, their peers. We need to make sure things at the Board of Education are safe and that they will be that solid wall against a lot of these attempts to cut and dismantle and destroy public education. This is opportunities directly for our kids. It's something we're fighting against at the federal level, but the state in many cases will be the greatest defense for our Hawaii keiki to make sure that they can get a real education. And I think back to when I was in the state senate, we were fighting for medically accurate sex education. Can they even find a book in the future in a public library or in a school on the continent in the next few years that even talks about medically accurate sex education? Probably not. And that's really, really disturbing when we just think about it on so many different levels. So education is critically important. And I just want to note, I've been looking in this room and I've been looking out there. I apologize, it's not that I'm looking at the street or anything. But I think it's really interesting that we actually sit on the edge of what was a red wave. I'm not sure you realize this. This is part of your ohana and your community, you know. The last election in Hawaii, a red wave took over almost the entire west side. We have one Democrat left on the entire west side, and it is wrapping around to my side of the island, to the North Shore, heading over to Kaneohe. When we talk about making sure that we secure our home front, sometimes we take it for granted that Hawaii is super blue. But I have been on every island in this state, every single one of them, and I promise you there are tinges of purple, if not full-blown red. And educating people to know that it is about all of us, regardless of if you affiliate Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever it is. The impacts that will have hit all of us. And it's up to them to make sure that they stand up, they vote, they vocalize, and they talk about how this will hurt them, not as Democrats or as Republicans or Green Party members or Libertarians, but as human beings, and that their vote matters at the polls, even here in bright blue Hawaii. Right. So I just wanted to bring that up because the urgency is really right now because we actually took hits in 2024 here too.
Right. Thank you, Congressman Jill Takuda. Sandy, you want to add to that?
I would love to, actually. So for my PhD, I studied right-wing movements in the US, mainly the ones who are relying on religion to get their narratives out. And what you see in Hawaii is very much what you were seeing in places like Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama in the 1970s and the 1980s. Those places were heavily blue. No one thought that anyone would ever turn them anything other than Democrat. What we saw in the 90s was a slow encroachment of that right. And in the 2000s, full-blown purple. By the 2010s, we had red states in those states that no one ever thought would be. And we're seeing that out here. It's a pattern. It is a pattern that we can stop as long as we are diligent. And like she was saying, being on those Board of Education, that is the #1 target of the right wing, is being on the Board of Education. If you can control what keiki are taught, if you control whether or not they are taught empathy, whether or not they are taught collective consciousness, then you can change the future for whatever you want it to be, and that is their target. One of the ways that they're doing that is through the Teneo Network. If you've not heard the Teneo Network, then you need to look it up. It is heavily funded by Leonard Leo. They're going into every single blue state to ensure that they are taking everyone from the age of 18 to 39 to give them opportunity, money, and jobs. And in doing that, getting their loyalty, bringing them to the right, and ensuring that those generations are not giving rights to people who are different from what they are. So this is something that we have to take seriously. We have to be engaged. We have to take that step to make sure that we are talking to the people around us, not letting that right wave, that red wave, come across the rest of the islands, because it is coming. I promise you it is coming.
Thank you. And when we talk about community, talk about our community, we cannot not talk about immigration. Immigration is definitely one of the hot topics in this day and age. And Danica, many don't realize how complex and high stakes asylum can be for LGBTQIA plus people, especially when gender affirming care or identity itself can be grounds for persecution. Now, if you could just share with us, what does gender affirming asylum mean in practice?
Yeah, so it's actually, I think to start off, I think it's important to understand what asylum is. So asylum is a legal way for someone to come to the United States, regardless of how they entered, whether they entered on a plane, whether they crossed the fence, jumped a river. It is a right for them to claim asylum. And so when someone is claiming asylum, they're claiming it on a basis of that they fear that if they were to go back to their home country, they've faced persecution, and that they've shown that they have previously faced persecution in the past. Specifically for LGBTQ members and those who are who are non-binary or working on gender-affirming care, that asylum is based on that asylum claim is what we call on the basis of a particularized social group. So you can claim asylum because of your religion, your race, your ethnic group, your sex, your political opinion. But for particularized social group, that's usually what most LGBTQ asylum claims fall under, meaning that because they identify as gay, because they identify as trans, they're part of a community that they have a characteristic that cannot be changed. And because it cannot be changed, they're facing these persecutions, whether it's fear of death, whether it's fear of torture. And so that's why they come to the United States, to get away from that. And what has happened with this administration is that Trump has put on an executive order saying that there's only two genders, right? Male or female. And so what does that mean? So immigration court seeking asylum is not part of the third branch of government. It's actually an administrative function. So immigration judges are employees of the Department of Justice. Asylum officers are part of the Department of Homeland Security. And so when they get guidance like that from the president, how seriously are these claims taken, right? How seriously are they going to be taken for people who do have credible fears of going back to their country? And so it makes it scary for them, where they're going away from a home country that already doesn't accept them, and they're trying to find a United States as a place of acceptance. But they're facing even worse treatment here. They're not feeling accepted and included. And I think when we talk about the big ugly bill, instead of investing more in more asylum officers and more immigration judges to look at their well-founded claims, we're funding ICE officers to do more raids. And so instead of really taking the time to really hear their stories and really look at the credibility of their claims, while they're waiting for their court cases or their asylum cases, which can take now up to 4 or 5 years because it's so backlogged, they're going to be faced with deportation. And now with ICE having just as a big budget as the military, it makes you wonder and question, is this really a place for them where they can feel at home now when they're trying to run away from a home that didn't accept them in the first place? And I think it should make us question what we believe in as a country.
Thank you. Now, at the federal level, Congresswoman Takuda, how do these broader immigration policies, when we talk about detention practices, documentation requirements, intersect with LGBTQIA plus protections? With LGBTQIA plus protections, yeah. Just broader immigration policies at the federal level.
Well, I think to Danica's point about this administration's views on immigration, they don't believe in immigration, if I can just be very blunt. They believe in deportation. It's not about, unless you're a white Africanist, apparently. Then you get welcomed with open arms. But I've listened to some of the stories at the clinic, people who are fleeing for their lives, that it is a death sentence if you send them home. A death sentence. They've had family members murdered, extorted, abused, the worst possible things. All those things that Trump and this administration say they're trying to get out of our country. We have people fleeing that from their home countries, and now they are being shoved on a plane. Shoved on a plane to go back to that. That is a death sentence. And so that's a difficult question in the sense that I don't believe this administration has any immigration policy. They have deportation policies. Everything about the big ugly bill and what they're funding, even when I look at the defense budget, it all goes back to the border. Even when I look at the USDA, which should be about farming and food security, because we are a highly food insecure country. We are. It all ties back to the border. Even when they talk about the difficulties with labor and how they would love to have these programs that would allow people to seek asylum and work in this country, this administration's policies, again, really are more focused towards that deportation bend. And so I think when you look at it, it is very similar, sadly, in many ways to our LGBTQIA community. Because it's not about acceptance. It's not about immigration and welcoming in and seeking asylum. It's about deportation.
Yeah.
And it's about, again, to me, I hate to use this word over and over, but it's again about that erasure of identity and only recognizing two genders. And so that's sadly, I think, what we're up against. If we want to be hopeful, we know clearly what we need to work towards and why we are fighting. Whether it is for those that are seeking asylum, those that are seeking a better life, like every single one of us at some point coming to this country. Like my great-grandparents, I'm a fourth generation. Most of us here, we know which generation we are that gave us a chance and hope here before we were even part of this country, actually. And now when we look at our LGBTQ ohana, they have the same challenges and barriers that we have historically faced when it comes to immigration, and we've got to stand up. And we've got to make sure going forward, we flip the house, we take back the White House, and we open those doors again of acceptance and recognize that there are not just two genders in our society.
One of the things, go ahead. Yes.
So on the state level, I just want to say with the LGBTQ plus commission, we are working to work on a letter for the governor to make Hawaii a sanctuary state for transgender children and their parents. We have gotten a tremendous amount of pushback from the right. They came to our meeting a couple of months ago, and it was like 30 different people talking about how evil LGBT people are, how we're trying to steal children and all these types of things. But there is a coalition that's forming that is bringing people in to come to the meetings, to get them involved in the community and things like that. Josh Roach is actually overseeing some of that. You can talk to Dean Hammer and Joe Wilson as well if you want to get involved with that. But we are working on ensuring that we are a sanctuary state so that we can protect these people.
Thank you. That's very important. Danica, one of the things that you alluded to a while ago was particularly with intersecting identities. Identity documentation is something that sometimes we take for granted, when we talk about passports, driver's license. What are some of the barriers that LGBTIA plus immigrants face in updating their documentation?
So I want to say, to start off with immigration, I think what I've learned practicing this is that it's a hard community to advocate for, and I think it speaks to why we don't have comprehensive immigration reform for decades, because quite honestly, immigrants can't vote. Despite what people say, they cannot vote. And so it's hard for them to advocate because they're not like a clear constituency and voting bloc, right? And so what we also, when we talk about this idea that Maddie talked about as empathy, is we have to realize that what happens to them is eventually going to affect us somehow. So just from a basis part, right? So Representative Takuda came to Kona and a lot of our clients seeking asylum work in the coffee farms. If they're gone and we talk about all this talk about diversifying our economy and building our agriculture, who's gonna be that workforce for us if they're not here? That's gonna affect our ability to diversify our economy, grow our economy, and create a strong workforce. In terms of immigration and LGBTQ intersection, so USCIS, which is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, or just Department of Homeland Security in general, which relates to President Trump's executive order, only recognizes two genders. And so your identity documents for immigration has to be the gender you're assigned at birth. So let's say someone does get asylum and they transition from a male to a female. Their green card is going to be issued by their gender at birth, which is male. But then in Hawaii, where we recognize non-binary identities, you can have the X marker on your driver's license. So the problem with that is that if I was going to eventually, 5 years later, having this green card, apply for US citizenship, and I see these inconsistencies where the state recognizes what I actually am, but the federal level doesn't recognize my new identity, then they can create all kinds of questions of, are you committing document fraud? Who are you really, right? They can make that case. And how does that impact us that are US citizens, that were born here and have that privilege? Well, I know for some of you, if you've ever been to the DMV and trying to get your documentation for a real ID, that's very difficult. And so from getting a passport, there's pending litigation of whether having the X gender identity on the passport is still acceptable, right? If I'm trying to go to the DMV and the state recognizes me as my new identity, but the federal level doesn't, that makes documentation really difficult. And for a lot of us, what we don't realize is that for an ID, especially for immigrants, that means everything to them. It's not just about entering a club, right? It's about it's just not about being travel. It's about presenting ourselves and having a government ID that recognizes who we are. At the end of the day, it recognizes our full 100% self. And so when we have an inconsistent state policy and an inconsistent federal policy, it really hurts not just our immigrant communities, but it also can hurt us and having a government and leaders that recognize who we fully are and that recognizes and acknowledges our wholeness. And I think that is the struggle, and I think the reality I think I like to illustrate when I tell people why, even though they're not immigrants or immediate descendants of immigrants, why they should care about this issue. Because if it's happening to them, it's going to happen to us eventually.
Really appreciate that. I think it really highlights how interconnected we all are and how it will impact all of us. Maddie, I'm not sure if this happened in your line of work, but what happens when someone shows up with a documentation that doesn't match their identity, and how does that ripple into employment, housing, the services that you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think exactly to Danicole's point, this is kind of the practice and empathy of thinking about all of the places we use our documentation and reflecting on that in your own life. If I am going on a house tour and I am there with my girlfriend and we only want one bedroom, what happens when we get denied something? What are the protections for that, if that's the reason? If I'm at work and mention something about it and then I get fired, what are the protections around that? If I am looking to travel and TSA decides that my gender marker doesn't match what they see, am I allowed to leave the island even anymore? And those are the types of things that maybe aren't thought of if it's not a problem for you, but will become a problem for you eventually. I think exactly to what Danicole said. This is the starting, this is the testing, and it's not the end at all. And so when we are talking about building up those state protections, that's what we mean in all of those different areas. Those are all LGBT issues. They are also employment issues and labor issues and housing issues that will affect everybody. And that in itself is a measure of self-determination and sovereignty, is that how do we protect our community right here, right now?
Thank you. Protecting rights at the state level, as you said. I think we've gone through this. Federal protections are quite fragile, but Hawaii laws, as you had mentioned, still offer some strong non-discrimination protections for LGBTQIA plus community. Sandy, are there any specific actions that our community could take now to ensure these protections last?
Honestly, speak to your legislator. Call them every day, email them every day, go by their office every day. Anything you can do to be that squeaky wheel. Do not let them forget you. Do not let them forget what you want. Come to the commission meetings. Go to the neighborhood board meetings. Go to the other board meetings like the education board. Become involved. It is literally the only way we're going to save our way of life out here and to protect the rights that we have is to get involved that way. So like I said, talk to your legislator. I don't care if they hate you. I don't care if they slam the door in your face. Make sure they know who you are and what you want every day. Maybe not every day,
If I
but
could
you get the
quickly
point.
add to that, one of the great things about our legislators here is that so many of them look at and answer their own emails. So even if you're averse to calling up the phone and getting, somebody else, send them an email. Let them know you're here. Let them know you're part of the community. Let them know that equal rights for all is very important to you, particularly if your senator is on the Ways and Means Committee. I used to have the list in my head, but it escapes me right now. We have a pretty good chair, but some of the other old timers on that committee are kind of problematic.
And of course, we're lucky that Congresswoman Jill Takuda is here.
I'm going to put my old legislator hat on. I agree 100%. If I may add, having been on the other side, one thing I would humbly suggest is give legislators grace. Give them a little grace. There's a lot of judgment out there coming from every single angle. You're not progressive enough, you're not strong enough, you're not fighting enough. You're doing too much. Why are you being woke? I mean, every angle coming at you. We're also making an assumption that they understand every piece of language you all talk. Language is a big thing now. Think about the words we've been using even tonight. A lot of people out there in the public have no idea what that means. Make it personal. Make it personal. We're trying to protect the people we love. We're trying to help keep people healthy and alive. Use very simple explanations. I'm not trying to dumb this down. I'm saying we have to connect here. Sometimes we're very good at connecting here, the policy on the paper, on the written word. You have to touch them here, especially for lawmakers. You got plenty new ones actually now. If you think about how the average length of time that legislators in Hawaii have served, it's actually very few terms, especially on the House side. So it is a constant, I used to tell people, re-education. Don't make assumptions just because they're a Dem. They must know, and they're always going to be right there checking every box that you want. It's a gentle and yet sometimes pushy re-education and continuous education to your lawmakers. But I would say start with a little grace. And remember that they're human too, and they're going to feel guilt, and they're going to feel all kind of regret, and they're going to screw up their words every once in a while and say the wrong thing. They need you to be there to say, it's okay, let's just keep going, and let's keep fighting. And so that would be my humblest recommendation to any lawmaker that you talk to, bless you, because we're going to need everyone in on this fight. So.
Thank you.
One thing to let y'all know, I don't know if you know about the public access room at the state capitol is 401. The people who work there love to help you. They will let you know who your legislator is. They will let you know how to contact them. They will let you know what the legislative calendar looks like, where to find it. I mean, there is nothing that you cannot find in this office. You can print things out. You can make flyers. You can use your computer. It is basically your office in the state. And so go by there. There's only 2 in the country. There's one in Alaska and there's one here. So it makes ours very, very special. But that place is going to be one of your first stops if you don't know what to do or where to go.
Thank you. Well, we've covered a lot from immigration to healthcare to education to cultural shifts. Now we want to hear from you if you have any questions for our wonderful panelists. Yes.
Hello, My name's Carolyn Martinez-Galoyu. I've known a little discrimination, but nothing like what you have got. Luckily, I am white, basically. That's what Irish in me. But the other day, I had an absolutely wonderful opportunity. There was a colonel from the Air Force at the Purple Heart ceremony. And I just almost levitated out of my seat because within 2 weeks ago, the felon in the White House has now taken away from military members who have served their term. He's taken away their benefits. That is a contradiction. That is a violation of law. He can't do that. They've served their time. But if he decides that you're LGBT, but it's transgender, he's going after transgendered first. So I approached the colonel. It's a good thing Mike's not in the Air Force anymore. And I said to him, I want you to know that there are people out here that are very upset with the Air Force. How dare you? My husband served 25 years honorably in the Air Force, and now you're taking away the rights and the privileges of these people that want to retire? How dare you? And I said, I want you to go back. I know you guys talk. I said, I want you to go back and I talk all the way up. I said, don't you dare do this. I've never been ashamed of the Air Force. I am today. And the man didn't know. He kept looking for a way to escape. But I thought, you have to take every opportunity. And if they're wearing the uniform, by God, they better understand what they're supporting. And so that's just a word to the wise. But he's already done it. Who's the next? Who's the next? Is Mike, because we have a gay son? Is he going to take away his benefits? Is he going to take... Who is next on the list? He has a list. And we have to be able to say to everyone who is TG, and I have friends whose their grandparents to TG young people. And they're fighting for them too. You know, just as they're coming out, just as they're making their change. We cannot allow this to continue. This is a violation of a contract. Thank you. But please don't ever lose an opportunity to speak out, and strongly. You know, I wish I'd brought in his first shirt, but I didn't.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from our group?
If I could respond to that very quickly.
Yeah, please.
I think as a matter of law, I think what the denial of, and you know, I've talked about it with some attorneys and even a retired judge, and it's pretty clear that, you know, the withdrawal of retirement benefits for transgender service members is, you know, a flagrant violation of due process rights. And I don't think we can necessarily take security in that, though, given the fact that we have House leadership, Senate leadership, and a Supreme Court that has enabled this president so far in his extremist radical agenda. So, you know, who knows what the Supreme Court may do, you know, especially in the use of the emergency docket. And again, to provide context, let's not forget that gay people in the military were prohibited for 15 years after gay people were allowed in the civil service. For many decades, going back to even before the so-called Lavender Scare of the 1950s, you know, non-heterosexual people were viewed as a security threat. Why? Because they could be blackmailed, potentially. And unfortunately, it was only until, 2003, where anti-sodomy laws were struck down. So we've made progress over decades, and we have to be adamant at this point in time saying that, and fighting for that progress, and saying that enough is enough. And we're going to have to repair so much of the damage that this regime has caused. And I call this administration as a regime because it's acting like one right now.
Sure, but Sandy, do you want to go ahead and?
I was just going to say, one of the things that we have to remember, it doesn't stop until they take all of our rights away. Leonard Leo believes the most dangerous thing the United States has ever done was give the women the right to vote. So the last 105 years of progress is what they're trying to erase.
I just want to bring up a topic, right? It's been on the news this week, same-sex marriage under threat again. What's going on? Is SCOTUS really considering this for real? Is this under threat? What can we do about it?
I will talk about this really quickly. So I actually went to speak with Adrian Tam a couple of days ago about this exact thing. And obviously we have protections. Oh, sorry. He's a representative for Hawaii State. He represents Waikiki as his district. And he's assured us that, because we have the protections here in the state, that the federal level may be taken away, but in the state we're protected. But as we know, part of what they want to do is occupy democratic states. They want to bring in the military. They want to create military districts. If you don't know what military districts are, look up Reconstruction South and you'll figure it out really quickly. It's not a good thing. And so what they want to do is take our rights away to be able to protect ourselves with our state laws. So right now we're protected with our state laws, but we have to make sure we're diligent to make sure it stays there.
Yeah. I started out, by the way, working at the Public Access Room when it first opened in 1993. Don't do the math now. I was a high school student, but still, that was a long time ago. And so proud of it. But I remember in 1993, 94, never questioning if I'd be able to have abortion if I needed one. In fact, I was talking about putting condoms in public school health rooms because we needed to make sure contraceptions were available, right? And now fast forward to 2025, and my nieces have less rights than their grandmother did. I raise this because if you ask the basic question, could we see a reversal of same-sex marriage? What we fought for back in 94 when I stood in front of Terry Tom's hearing, appalled at what I was hearing. I don't know if many of you were there, but in the Department of Health conference room for a couple days. And then we defended our Constitution in 1998. And every time I got to vote on a bill for civil unions and same-sex marriage on the floor of the state Senate, and how proud we were that we were able to do that and to watch that right won federally. If you ask me, is there a chance? For everything that I've seen stripped away literally in the last year, I would say we can't be complacent. We absolutely cannot be complacent. I don't think we did enough of a look back with Roe of what happened and what we did not do. We've got to quickly, if you ask me, start to do a hot wash. Is it a hot wash? Is that what they call it? I don't know. Post-mortem. Throw it all on the table. What did we do wrong? What didn't we do? What didn't we see? Because we have got to throw that and 3 kitchen sinks at protecting same-sex marriage right now at the federal level. Because too much is that we fought too long and too hard. I'm tired of generations seeing rights ripped backwards. Ripped backwards. And so I wish I could be an optimist here and say, absolutely not, don't worry about it. But take a look at that Supreme Court. Take a look at that Supreme Court. We have got to figure out how we're going to defend. Because even if we're safe in Hawaii, we're never safe anymore if you look at these days. Look at California, deployment of the Guard, Marines in the streets right there. So many situations. But even if we're okay here in the middle of the Pacific, that's not fair to our brothers and sisters on the continent as well. And so we've got to hurry up and figure out, not just wonder, not just worry. We have got to start planning, strategizing, putting up barriers of protection for this at the federal level. And I have not seen that kind of planning yet, but we absolutely have to think about Roe and make sure we do it right when it comes to that.
This is a wonderful conversation. Representative, I wanted to ask you as the most experienced legislature here, but it's really for everybody. As mentioned, as you said, Hawaii's a blue state. The ledge is going to stay that same way. But what has happened, in addition to the red wave, certain parts of the island, is that the sort of Trumper folks are making enough of a holler that I think it scares off even well-meaning and positive legislators. And we saw this with the SHIELD bill, where there were probably a majority of legislators who would have done it, but because a big stink was raised and a couple of buses from this side came in and brought in people, and there was a lot of clabber, and it wasn't really a necessary bill, it got shoved aside. And we are trying to get an executive order, but it's not the same as having legislation. So my question is, when you're sitting in the ledge and you're in a position like yourself, or maybe a little bit more towards the middle, and you want to make sure that you get reelected, and you don't want to do anything that's going to hurt your chances, what is it that convinces you to stand up and to do the right thing? What is the best thing for us to be doing? Is it writing letters? Is it showing up at meetings? Is it making large donations? Is it recruiting other young politicians to follow? What is it that we should be doing that would help?
That's an interesting question for me, because I've never sat in office trying to think how I can have job security. I don't think anyone, this is not about job security. This is not a career. I know they call us career politicians sometimes because we've been in it long. But career means that you want to play it safe so you can keep staying in where you are, attain years and invest and whatnot. You have to view every day in elected office as a contact sport. I know that you can lose it at any moment if you're doing the right thing and you're taking the right vote. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask that kind of question. I lost Ways and Means for taking a stand. I lost an election, right? And I don't regret any decision that I made during my tenure in the state Senate or now in Congress. And I know every single vote I take could be used 100% against me, and has been. We have to remind lawmakers that you're not there to take up space. Sorry, is anyone here, by the way? Matt does that. You know, you get it. Look at, like, okay. We have to remind them. This is not about taking up space. It's about doing the right thing. And sometimes when you do the right thing, you're gonna get banged up a bit. But let them know that you are there, that you're doing this for the right reasons, that you've got a community that will have your back and support you when you've got folks with 6-foot crosses in the middle of the street sign waving against you, like I had when Tracy Bean ran against me, a pastor woman. I had other people standing there saying, it's okay, because you did the right thing. They need to know. It's not about donations and all this stuff. They need to know that they have got that support. You know what? They have to know that things like the SHIELD law are necessary. Because gender-affirming care and things like that, that's health care. Remember, we talked abortion is health care, abortion is health care. We repeat it over and over again. The same thing needs to be said about gender-affirming care is health care. And if they care about access to health care, then they need to make sure gender-affirming care is a right, granted to every single person. So every bill, every resolution that you ask them to sponsor is necessary. Maybe not to them personally, but to the people that they represent and people in that state. But I would say it's about letting them know they will be faced with the worst and tough decisions. That's why I mentioned, you got youngins in there. We didn't have to take some hard votes. They didn't vote on civil unions, same-sex marriage, death with dignity. They didn't take out $1 billion through the Great Recession and cut that from university and funding. They didn't sit at a lot of really difficult decisions. These are the first that some of them will be facing. Part of it is kind of putting your arms around them and supporting them and helping them to know that, you know what, with all the stink mail you get, you got 10 times more that just didn't have the opportunity maybe to tell you, thank you. You did this for me. You did the right thing. So anything you can do to give them that courage and support, because many of them will be facing these hard, tough votes for the very first time. I promise, as someone who's sat in those seats, it'll make a difference. And let's hope they will make the right vote. And then those bills and those things that you need, they will pass. So that would be my humblest of suggestions.
We have one more question.
Congresswoman Takuda, I'm going to ask what I asked something of you that I asked of Senator Schatz yesterday. Can you please have a conversation with your friends in the Big Square building and remind them that they're there to protect us from the Orange Menace? I heard too many times from not youngins, but seasoned legislators that they,
Which square building are you talking about, ours or the one that I work in?
oh, that's the nut house. Sorry, not the one that you work in, the one you used to work in. Yeah. That they're there to protect us. I heard too many times from the chair of Judiciary that he was killing a bill because he was afraid we were of what it might anger the big orange menace. But our die was cast in 2016, how we voted then and voted in 2020 and voted in 2024. And thankfully we have you, Maisie, and Brian there fighting the good fight. It's just that no matter what they do there, he already has his eyes set on us for something that's going to happen. So if you could have that conversation with them and remind them that they're there to protect us. Yes, we have to do our part, and that means reaching out to our legislators. Also reaching out to our community members and making sure they're registered to vote. I don't think I've ever heard that tonight, is that everybody needs to make sure that everybody's registered to vote and that they vote and that they're educated when they get their ballots in the mail and they return them. Because that is a huge problem, especially with the queer community. They're like, oh, I didn't vote, I forgot about it, my vote doesn't matter. We saw in this district right over here, we're actually in this district, 12 votes. 12 votes made a difference, and it could have gotten rid of Pyrrhic, sorry. I always get that wrong. I don't know why. But so that's my question for you, and just a reminder that putting everybody on notice is that this is going to take all of us, and that everybody is talking about marriage equality. For us here in Hawaii, we're good. But there's other battles that need to be held, and as what Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke said when she swore all us commissioners into office, is that we need to remember and fight like every fight is our last fight, and that we need to stand up every chance we get against hatred and bigotry, no matter where it comes, whether it impacts you directly or not, because somebody fought for your rights. If you got the right to marry and you were not there at the Capitol and you did not deal with that hate 12 years ago, somebody else did. And so now you need to stand up and support our immigrants. They killed the immigration bills that would have protected our immigrants, and that was disgusting. So that's the reason that it's not just about queer issues, it's about all of us. So I know I'm putting a lot on your shoulders, but just have that conversation with them. I'm gonna ask the same of Maisie when I see her. I won't ask Ed, but I did ask, so yeah.
But you should.
I should, I will. If he'll have a conversation with me.
He is, you should ask every one of us, but yes, the answer is absolutely. I have a lot of conversations with them, because a lot of times they ask us, do you think we shouldn't be too out there because we might stir things up? Let's be real, I think you're absolutely right. He doesn't like us. Like, I'm sorry, I'm being so rude right here. But I don't care what we try to pretend we aren't. We try to pretend we're not so progressive, we're not so diverse, we don't like equality, we're not inclusive, we're not indigenous. I'm sorry, that is exactly what we are here in Hawaii. And anytime we try to be anything but or pretend we're not to kiss up to the orange Jesus, we're selling parts of our soul. We can't lose ourselves in this battle to protect the people and the state that we love. We can't lose ourselves. And that's why I've told people, as much as I get it, you're trying to take out the words from your websites, from your grant applications to match up with what they think is acceptable. Is it worth the money? Is it worth the grant money? He's gonna come after us. He's gonna do to us what he will, take from us what he will, no matter what we try to pretend we aren't. And so stand up and be who we are. That's the only thing we should ever be, partly so we can show our kids, that's the way you should live. That's the way you should govern. When this little one over here takes my seat one day, no rush, honeys. I got work to do, though, okay? She's like, wait, what? What's going on here? We're all just seat warmers. Every single one of us. They got a lot more years than I do. But it is about how we pass it on authentically and fully to the next generation. And if we forget who we are and we sell ourselves short just to match up with their guidelines and what they think is American, I'm not going to give these young ones in here a chance to really lead this country to that greatness that everyone seems to be talking about right now. So 100%, we'll talk to them. But I appreciate that. I know when I'm in DC, y'all are actually the ones that are in the building, making sure they remember what we are standing up for and what we're fighting for. So my big mahalo to all of you for what you do every single day. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Takuda. I think at this time, I just wanted to give each of our panelists one final statement, if you could offer any to our community.
I think for, like I mentioned before, with immigration, is that if it's going to happen to them, it's going to happen to you in some way for another. And one of the stories that you probably have heard in the news, but I was surprised how viral it got. But you probably heard about Sejun Park's story, the Purple Heart veteran that got deported. He was my client. I can talk about it because we've been everywhere. And I knew the moment I knew immigration was such a hot topic and it was like a very controversial topic. But I knew, when Representative Takuda talked about it's the heart that matters, it's the stories that matter, I knew how much that story resonated with people because the next morning after his story dropped, I was surfing out at Kaiser's in the morning, and a couple of these uncles, I kind of know them, but they came up to me, they're like, "Oh, brother, you was the one in the news, yeah, I saw you, bro. First of all, bro, I never knew you was one lawyer, right? You're so different." And he shakes my hand, and he's like, "Bro, you know what? I voted for Trump. Don't get mad at me, bro, but you know what? I heard the story. I was like, bro, this is nuts. I was in the military, and this is we gotta make exceptions. I'm just having a hard time processing this." And I'm just looking at him like, "Oh, yeah, you should do that." and he's like, "Oh, yeah, but there's one, that wave. You go catch one right now. That's for you." And that's what I was like, first of all, I didn't know you watched the news. But secondly, what I learned from his story, and a lot of people would come up to me, is that, we can talk a lot about the intellectuals. I can go deep on his case about the intricacies of immigration law and how it led, how all his criminal convictions led to what he was. But what resonated a lot with people, especially people like that uncle, was that they found something in his story that related to them. The veteran story. Sejun raised 2 kids. Some of them, they, made mistakes back in their youth, getting high, but then they got clean and sober. They're taking care of their elderly parents who have dementia. I think it's important, as we talked about here, is that as much, I think I can definitely tell in this group, a lot of strong, intelligent people who really think about these issues and really take the time to learn it. But not everybody has that capacity. And so finding a certain story that connects with them and connects with their lived experiences, even if they walk away or paddle away, not fully agreeing with what you believe in, what you say, at least you found something to at least open that conversation, to make them think about and empathize with other people who may not have that same experience as them. And I think as you start to open those opportunities for story and dialogue, that's how we win hearts and minds. That's how we rebuild the movement to making a progressive society. It all starts with that story and experience that connects with them.
Thank you, Danica. Maddie?
Absolutely that. There's been a lot of questions, I think, and I have this every day, of what do I do? So much is happening all of the time, so far away, what can I do? And there's been a lot of conversation about calling your legislator and getting on the boards. And all of that is true and important, and it's also not the only thing you can do. I think for me, the most important place is wherever you fit best, and that's what you can do best. I'm really lucky and very fortunate that I get paid to call my legislators, and I get paid to do this research, but my mom doesn't, and my popo doesn't. So I don't have the same expectations of them to put forth 40 hours minimum of work that I do. And I think, just like Danica says, when we are leading with aloha, when we are leading with empathy, leading with malama, it's meeting people where they are, but it's also giving back that same energy you're getting. when you are talking with someone, when you are trying to change their minds, it's not always just about niceties, but it's understanding, why do you think the way that you do? Can you maybe try to think the way that I think, or at least understand why I'm coming from this? And figuring out where you go best and what you can do at every level, I think is the most important.
Thank you, Maddie. Sandy?
I think for me, the biggest thing is to make sure you educate yourself. Make sure you understand who the enemy is. Make sure you understand that the patterns of history continue to repeat over and over and over and over. And unless we learn what those patterns are, unless we figure out how to circumvent those patterns, they're going to continue to bulldoze over us. So educate yourself, get involved. Like these two said, make sure you're speaking to your neighbors, talk to the people around you, let them understand what your heart is. Make sure you understand that you're not trying to put your expectations onto other people. Great advice, by the way. But educate yourself. That is the biggest thing.
Thank you. Nikos?
I think, I support everything that has been said already, and congratulations to Dana Cole for being on international TV on the Amanpour program. Wow. Yeah, I was shocked and pleasantly surprised to see him at 11:30 at night a few weeks ago here. It was a bright spot in what is usually a very gloomy program. I think, my parting statement, I think we need to give each of us need to give ourselves space to be angry and to be sad, and kind of not push that away. It's important, as members of the LGBTQ community, to acknowledge and to respond to the trauma that we faced over our lives. I came of age at a time when, HIV/AIDS was exploding and people were dropping like flies. And we had governmental people, not giving a fuck. And as a young person, it was particularly painful. And I've internalized a lot of that shame and stigma. And that shame and stigma has not passed. But with the past isn't even past. When you look at the arc of history. But again, give yourself room to feel bad, to grieve, but also to take care of yourself and not get sucked down into it. Because so long as we're alive and we've got each other, we have our stories to tell. We need to speak truth to power any way we can. But we're in Hawaii, right? So let's meet each other as individuals and look one another in the eye and kind of have a heart-to-heart if we can. This is not the continent where we shout and scream, and when people do that, you need to call them out. This is not the way we do things in Hawaii.
Thank you. Congressman Tukuya.
Thank you. Ditto on everything, especially the giving yourself a little space and the chance to grieve, be angry, be everything, because this is traumatic. We're living through trauma right now. This will give us PTSD. I don't care who you are, where you are, what your situations. This is a traumatic moment in history that we will live through. It's hard to see, right, forward. It's hard to see, we're not even a year in. And it's hard to imagine what is 2026 gonna look like, and 2027. It's hard, but we will live through it. So give yourself some space. I would say such good advice. Please share your stories with all of us so we can share it and amplify it out there. But I would say the one little bit of advice that I would give is don't think that what you do doesn't matter. Whether you get paid to do it for a job, whether you only have 30 minutes in a week or 30 minutes every day or 15 seconds right now to do something. It's very easy to feel like everything that you do is useless and hopeless. That we've got a crazy man in the White House and we've got a GOP majority in the House and Senate that doesn't give a damn. It's easy to feel like, well, the calls I made, the emails I sent, the petition I signed, the $5 donation I gave, the protest march that I went on, doesn't matter. It does. Every bit of energy that you pour into this universe to stand up to this, it makes a difference. And every day I meet people who say, you know, it doesn't matter. I call people, I email, and yet the votes don't change. Please know that everything that you do, can do, will do, it makes a huge difference in shifting the tide. And just like history, and just like next year and the year after that, we will get to a better place. We will get past this trauma. But I just want you to know that we see you, we appreciate you, we love you for who you authentically 100% are. We're standing with you, by you. And I can tell you, as a member of Congress, I appreciate the fact that I know when I'm out there fighting like hell, I know each and every one of you has got my back here at home and up in Washington, D.C. So a big, again, mahalo to all of you, and what you do absolutely matters. So thank you.
Thank you so much, President. I think tonight really is a great reminder that policies are not just words on paper, but they are our stories, our lived experiences that will determine whether we will have access to healthcare and whether we will be able to live freely and thrive in this community. And although right now it just seems that the threats are real, I think so is our resilience. And I think, as Congressman Takuda had mentioned, our history here in Hawaii and beyond really shows that when we educate each other, when we show up, when we care for each other, we win. And mahalo for each of you for showing up, for standing up. And mahalo to our panelists, to the Legacy Foundation, and to Third House for giving us this space. Thank you, and have a good evening.